watch. And all you see is what goes on that is happening of itself. You're breathing, the wind is blowing, the trees are waving, your blood is circulating, your nerves are tingling. It's all going on of itself. But you know, that's you. That's the real you. The you that goes on of itself.
There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from wanting a different life. Not the tiredness of physical labor, but the soul-deep fatigue of living in constant rejection of what is. You wake up every day in a reality you didn't choose, surrounded by circumstances you want to escape, waiting for the moment when everything finally shifts into what you've been imagining. And here's the part that nobody wants to hear: that waiting, that rejection, that constant focus on the gap between where you are and where you want to be, that's exactly what's keeping you trapped. Your current reality isn't the obstacle to your desired life. It's the only pathway to it. And the more you deny it, resist it, or sit around waiting for it to transform into something else before you engage with it, the further that desired reality moves from your grasp. This isn't motivational rhetoric. It's the fundamental mechanism of how transformation actually works. Einstein said it clearly: you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. Your current reality was generated by a specific frequency, a specific interpretation, a specific way of seeing and being. And until you shift that internal frequency, the external circumstances can rearrange themselves endlessly without anything actually changing. Most people think they have a life situation, a set of circumstances that exist independent of their perception. They point to concrete facts: this job, this relationship, this bank account, this living situation. These are real, they think. These are the problems. But what you're actually living isn't a situation. It's a frequency. It's an interpretation running so constantly you mistake it for objective reality. The same circumstances filtered through different consciousness produce completely different experiences. Two people can work in the same office, under the same boss, with the same responsibilities. One experiences it as suffocating limitation. The other sees it as temporary groundwork for something larger. Same facts. Different frequencies. Different realities. This isn't positive thinking or perspective shifting as some surface technique. It's recognizing that your experience of reality is constructed by the lens through which you view it. And that lens, that frequency, is the only thing you actually have direct control over. You don't have a bad situation that needs to change. You have a frequency that's generating experiences consistent with itself. And trying to change the external situation without addressing the internal frequency is like rearranging furniture in a burning house and wondering why you still feel the heat.
And I think the difficulty is, to borrow an old Chinese saying, that when the wrong man uses the right means work in the wrong way. In other words, there's something wrong with the way we think. And while that is there, everything we do will be a mess.
Scan through comments on any content about manifestation, consciousness, or transformation. You'll see the same pattern repeating endlessly. I'm tired of this law of attraction stuff. I've tried everything. Nothing changes. I'm waiting for the day spirituality finally works miracles in my life. Both statements reveal the exact mechanism keeping these people locked in place. The first is focused entirely on external validation. They're standing outside their house waiting to see the renovations complete before they're willing to acknowledge that anything's different. The second has placed all power outside themselves, waiting for some external force to save them rather than recognizing they are the force. Both are trapped in the same frequency, expectation without embodiment. wanting without being, hoping without becoming. And here's what makes this trap so effective. It feels like you're doing the work. You're thinking about what you want. You're visualizing. You're affirming. You're consuming content about transformation. You're engaged with the process. But engagement isn't the same as transformation. You can study swimming for years without ever getting in the water. And all that study, all that thinking about swimming, doesn't make you a swimmer. Only swimming makes you a swimmer. The waiting trap convinces you that thinking about change, wanting change, expecting change, is the same as changing. And it's not. It's the opposite. Because every moment spent in expectation is a moment spent reinforcing the frequency of lack. I'm waiting to see my reality change translates to I am currently experiencing the absence of what I want. And the universe doesn't respond to your wishful thinking. It responds to your state. Your frequency. The reality you're embodying right now, in this moment. Here's where people start to resist. Because embedded in all of this is an uncomfortable implication. If your reality is a reflection of your frequency, then you're responsible for what you're experiencing. And that feels wrong. Because terrible things happen to people who didn't create them. Trauma is real. Abuse is real. Systemic oppression is real. Circumstances beyond individual control are absolutely, undeniably real. So let's be clear about what responsibility means in this context, and what it doesn't mean. You are not responsible for what happened to you. You are not to blame for circumstances you were born into, systems you didn't create, or actions others took that harmed you. That's not what this is about. But you are responsible for what you do with what happened. You're responsible for whether you let those circumstances define your permanent identity. You're responsible for the story you tell yourself about what those experiences mean about you and what's possible for you. A breakup happened. That's a fact. But whether that breakup becomes I am someone who was abandoned and can never trust again, or I was with someone who wasn't right for me and I'm now free to find better alignment, that's interpretation. That's the story you're choosing to live inside. And here's the thing about stories, they're not just passive descriptions of what happened. They're active generators of what happens next. The story you tell yourself about your past creates the lens through which you see your present, which determines the actions you take, which generates your future. If your story is I am damaged by what happened to me, then everything gets filtered through that damage. Opportunities look threatening. Growth feels impossible. Change seems like a betrayal of the identity you've built around your wounds. But if your story is I survived something difficult and gained wisdom from it, the same past becomes fuel rather than burden. The same experiences that could have imprisoned you become evidence of your capacity to transform. Same past. Different frequency. Different available futures.
Now, as far as I can see, the basic mistake is that we've invented this wonderful system of language and calculation, and that it is at once too simple to deal with the complexity of the world, and also we are liable to confuse that system of symbols with the world itself, just as we confuse, say, money with wealth.
Here's where people start to resist. Because embedded in all of this is an uncomfortable implication. If your reality is a reflection of your frequency, then you're responsible for what you're experiencing. And that feels wrong. Because terrible things happen to people who didn't create them. Trauma is real. Abuse is real. Systemic oppression is real. Circumstances beyond individual control are absolutely, undeniably real. So let's be clear about what responsibility means in this context, and what it doesn't mean. You are not responsible for what happened to you. You are not to blame for circumstances you were born into, systems you didn't create, or actions others took that harmed you. That's not what this is about. But you are responsible for what you do with what happened. You're responsible for whether you let those circumstances define your permanent identity. You're responsible for the story you tell yourself about what those experiences mean about you and what's possible for you. A breakup happened. That's a fact. But whether that breakup becomes I am someone who was abandoned and can never trust again, or I was with someone who wasn't right for me and I'm now free to find better alignment, that's interpretation. That's the story you're choosing to live inside. And here's the thing about stories, they're not just passive descriptions of what happened. They're active generators of what happens next. The story you tell yourself about your past creates the lens through which you see your present, which determines the actions you take, which generates your future. If your story is I am damaged by what happened to me, then everything gets filtered through that damage. Opportunities look threatening. Growth feels impossible. Change seems like a betrayal of the identity you've built around your wounds. But if your story is I survived something difficult and gained wisdom from it, the same past becomes fuel rather than burden. The same experiences that could have imprisoned you become evidence of your capacity to transform. Same past. Different frequency. Different available futures. Here's where the complexity appears. Because manifestation talks a lot about future reality. About visualizing what you want. About feeling into the life you're moving toward. And that seems to contradict everything about being present with your current reality. So which is it? Should you focus on the present or the desired future? The answer is both, because they're not actually separate. When you visualize a desired future, where are you having that experience? Right now. When you feel into an imagined reality, where does that feeling exist? In your present body, in this moment. The future you're imagining isn't somewhere else in time. It's a frequency you're accessing right now. And the more you can embody that frequency in your present moment, the more your external reality begins to align with it. But here's the trap most people fall into. They use the future as a rejection of the present. They imagine what they want as proof that what they have isn't good enough. They feel into abundance as a way of highlighting their current lack. And that doesn't work. Because the energy underneath that practice isn't I am abundant. It's I am lacking and trying to fix it. And that second frequency is what generates experience. Real manifestation isn't about rejecting your present to create a different future. It's about bringing the frequency of your desired reality into your present experience. Not as imagination that highlights what's missing, but as an actual state you can access right now, regardless of circumstances. Someone can live in poverty and embody abundance through gratitude for what they have. Someone can live in wealth and embody scarcity through constant focus on what they lack. The external circumstances are almost irrelevant compared to the internal frequency. This is why gratitude isn't just some feel-good practice that spiritual teachers recommend. It's the fundamental mechanism for frequency shift. If you can't find anything extraordinary about having a roof during rain, food when you're hungry, clothes to wear, then you're completely disconnected from the present moment. You're so focused on what's missing that you're blind to what's here. And if you're blind to what's here, you can't embody the frequency of having. You're permanently stuck in the frequency of lacking, which generates more experiences of lack. Gratitude isn't about convincing yourself that bad circumstances are good. It's about recognizing that even in difficult circumstances, there are elements of your present reality that are supporting you. And bringing attention to those elements shifts your frequency from lack to presence. When you can genuinely appreciate the small miracles of daily existence, the fact that your body breathes without conscious effort, that you have the capacity to think and feel and experience, that you're alive in a moment that will never come again, you're no longer waiting for your life to start. You're actually living it. And that shift from waiting to living is everything. Because the person who's waiting is by definition not yet there. But the person who's living is already embodying the state they want to experience more of. People misunderstand how manifestation works. They think it's about magical thinking somehow materializing objects from nothing. They imagine money appearing, opportunities dropping from the sky, circumstances shifting through some mystical force responding to their wishes. But that's not how it works. Manifestation isn't magic. It's alignment. When you shift your internal frequency, you start noticing opportunities that were always there but invisible to your previous state. You start taking actions that your old frequency wouldn't have allowed. You start showing up differently, which causes people to respond to you differently. The opportunities aren't appearing from nowhere. They're becoming visible because you're finally able to see them. The circumstances aren't changing magically. They're shifting because you're interacting with them from a different state. This takes time. It takes consistency. It requires you to embody a frequency before the external evidence appears. And this is where most people break. They try it for a week, a month, maybe a few months. They don't see dramatic external change, so they conclude it doesn't work. They go back to the old frequency, the old interpretation, the old story about why their life is the way it is. But frequency shift doesn't work on the timeline of impatience. It works on the timeline of genuine internal transformation. And that transformation happens gradually, through repeated choice, accumulated evidence, slowly shifting identity. Every story of successful manifestation follows the same pattern. I started focusing on this 2, 3, 4 years ago. I kept working on my internal state. Eventually, circumstances aligned and the thing I'd been working toward became real. Never is it, I wanted something, did some visualization for a week, and it appeared magically. The timeline is longer than your impatience wants it to be. The process is more internal than your action-oriented conditioning expects. And the result appears through natural mechanisms, jobs, opportunities, connections, decisions, not through supernatural intervention. Here's a question worth examining honestly. Do you spend more time consuming content about transformation or actually practicing transformation in your present moment? Most people are addicted to information. They watch videos, read books, take courses, accumulate knowledge about consciousness, manifestation, frequency, alignment. And all that information creates the feeling of progress without actual progress. Because information isn't transformation. Understanding isn't embodiment. Knowing about frequency shift doesn't mean you're actually shifting your frequency. It's like watching cooking videos for hours every day while never actually preparing food. You can know every technique, understand every principle, and still be hungry. Because knowing and doing are completely different activities. The irony is that consuming this content often becomes another form of waiting. You're gathering information for some future moment when you'll finally be ready to apply it. But that moment never comes, because there's always more to learn, always another perspective to consider, always another course that might have the missing piece. Meanwhile, your actual life is happening right now. And every moment spent consuming rather than practicing is a moment where your frequency stays exactly the same. This isn't an argument against learning. Information can be valuable. It can expand your understanding, provide new frameworks, offer different perspectives. But information is only valuable if it leads to different action, different ways of being, different frequencies embodied in actual moments. Otherwise, it's just entertainment that makes you feel like you're doing something while your reality remains unchanged. Here's a practice that shifts everything when you actually do it. Recognize the neutrality of your reality. Nothing means anything. Circumstances are just circumstances. Facts are just facts. Meaning is something you add through interpretation. Your job isn't inherently good or bad. It's a set of activities you perform in exchange for resources. Whether it's soul-crushing or character-building is interpretation. Your relationship history isn't inherently traumatic or educational. It's a series of interactions that happened. Whether they damaged you or strengthened you is interpretation. Your current financial situation isn't inherently limiting or motivating. It's a number representing available resources. Whether it means I'm failing or I'm building is interpretation. When you practice witnessing your reality without judgment, without the automatic interpretations you layer onto everything, you come into direct contact with what is. And what is, without your story about it, is neutral. This practice is difficult because it requires you to take full responsibility. You can't blame the circumstances anymore. You can't point to external facts as the reason your life is the way it is. Because once you see that the circumstances are neutral and the meaning is your creation, you're the author of your experience. But that difficulty is also freedom. Because if you're creating the meaning, you can create different meaning. If your interpretation is generating your experience, you can choose different interpretation. The circumstances don't have to change for your life to change. Your frequency has to change. And your frequency changes through different interpretation, different attention, different embodiment in each present moment. People want dramatic transformation. They want to jump from their current reality to some drastically different reality, instantly. They're living at level 3, but they want to be at level 10, immediately. And when that jump doesn't happen, they conclude manifestation doesn't work, consciousness work is pointless, frequency shift is a myth. But transformation doesn't work that way. It works incrementally. You move from 3 to 3.2 to 3.5 to 4 to 4.3. Small shifts, accumulated over time, that eventually add up to dramatic change. The problem is, from inside the process, it's hard to see the movement. You're so focused on the gap between where you are and where you want to be that you don't notice you're actually moving. You're climbing the mountain but spending all your energy looking at the summit, so you don't realize you're no longer at the base. This is why it's crucial to train your perception to recognize small shifts rather than obsessing over dramatic change. To notice when things are slightly easier than they used to be. When your response to difficulty is marginally different than it was 6 months ago. When opportunities appear that wouldn't have been visible to your previous frequency. These small shifts are the evidence that frequency change is happening. But if you're only looking for dramatic external transformation, you'll miss them. And missing them, you'll conclude nothing's changing, which reinforces the old frequency and actually prevents the larger shifts from occurring. If you're stuck, if you've been in the same place for years, something's being overlooked. Some pattern you're not seeing. Some story you keep telling yourself that's maintaining the stuckness. You can't passively wait for transformation. You have to be active in your own evolution. Not active in the sense of forcing external change, but active in the sense of engaging with your internal state, questioning your interpretations, choosing different responses, practicing different frequencies. 3 years in the same psychological place means there's a loyalty to that place you haven't recognized. An identity built around being stuck. A story about why you can't move that's more compelling than the possibility of movement. And until you see that pattern, question that identity, challenge that story, the external circumstances can shift endlessly without your experience actually changing. This isn't judgment. It's recognition. Because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Once you recognize the story, you can tell a different one. Once you understand the frequency you've been maintaining, you can practice a different frequency. Society wants you focused externally. Work harder. Acquire more. Chase bigger goals. Prove your worth through external achievement. Stay in motion. Never stop. Never question. Because an externally focused person is easier to control. They're always chasing, always consuming, always believing the next achievement will finally be enough. And it never is, because the hole they're trying to fill is internal. There has to be balance between internal work and external action. If you only work internally and never take action, nothing manifests in physical reality. But if you only work externally and ignore your internal state, you can accumulate all the material success in the world and still feel empty. The manifestation process requires both. Internal frequency shift that changes how you see and interpret reality. And external action aligned with that new frequency that allows circumstances to shift. But most people are completely imbalanced toward external action. They're running in the rat race, exhausting themselves, wondering why success feels hollow when they achieve it. And they never stop long enough to recognize that without internal alignment, external achievement is meaningless. This is why burnout is epidemic. Why people reach their goals and feel nothing. Why material success doesn't translate to fulfillment. Because the success was achieved from a frequency of lack, of proving worth, of trying to fix an internal problem with external solutions. Real transformation requires slowing down enough to work internally. To recognize your frequency. To question your interpretations. To shift your state before taking action. So that the action comes from alignment rather than desperation. Past and future are mental constructs. They don't exist outside your mind's creation of them. The past is memory, constantly being reconstructed based on your current state. The future is imagination, shaped by your current beliefs about what's possible. The only thing that actually exists is now. This moment. The only place where anything actually happens. And this isn't some abstract spiritual concept. This is practical mechanics. Every action you take happens now. Every feeling you have happens now. Every frequency you embody happens now. Every interpretation you make happens now. Which means if your manifestation practice is about creating a future reality, you're missing the point. You're not creating the future. You're shifting your present frequency, which determines what becomes visible and available to you in subsequent present moments. The desired reality you're imagining isn't waiting for you somewhere in the future. It's a frequency available to you right now, regardless of circumstances. And the more you can embody that frequency now, in your actual present moment, the more your circumstances naturally align with it. This is why presence is the foundation of all transformation. Not presence as a concept you think about, but presence as an actual state you practice. Being here, fully, in this moment. Not waiting for the next moment. Not regretting the last moment. Just here. And when you're actually here, in this moment, without story, without judgment, without the mental noise of past and future, you discover something most people never experience. You're already complete. Already whole. Already enough. Not because you've achieved anything. Not because circumstances are perfect. But because in the pure present, Without story, there's nothing missing. There's only what is. And what is, when met fully, is always enough. Your current reality isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you exactly what frequency you've been embodying. It's providing the contrast necessary for you to recognize what you want to shift. It's offering the raw material for your transformation. But only if you stop rejecting it. Only if you stop waiting for it to change before you're willing to engage with it. Only if you recognize that the shift you're seeking is internal, not external. The manifestation you're looking for isn't about making different circumstances appear. It's about embodying a different frequency so completely that circumstances naturally align with it. And that embodiment happens here. Now, in your present reality, exactly as it is. Not by pretending difficulties aren't difficult. Not by forcing positivity over genuine challenges. But by recognizing that your interpretation of circumstances determines your experience of them. And interpretation is always choice. You can experience your current reality as evidence that you're stuck, that nothing works, that you're powerless. Or you can experience it as exactly what needs to be here for you to develop the internal capacity to handle what you're moving toward. Same circumstances. Different frequency. Different available futures. The shift from waiting for your life to change to recognizing that change happens in a single moment of recognition. And then it happens again. And again. Every moment you choose presence over resistance. Every moment you choose interpretation that empowers rather than limits. Every moment you embody the frequency you want to experience more of. That's the work. Not dramatic. Not instantaneous. But real. And if you do that work consistently, not occasionally but as the primary practice of your life, your reality will shift. Not because the universe rewards you. Not because you've earned it. But because you've become someone who operates at a different frequency, which naturally generates different experiences. Your current reality is the only doorway to your desired reality. Stop trying to bypass it. Stop waiting for it to change before you're willing to work with it. Stop rejecting the present moment as insufficient. Meet your reality exactly as it is. Find something to appreciate about what's here. Shift your interpretation from lack to presence. Embody the frequency of what you want to experience more of. And watch how circumstances begin to align, not magically, but naturally, as your internal state makes different actions possible and different opportunities visible. The transformation you're seeking isn't coming from outside. It's emerging from within. And your current reality, exactly as it is right now, is where that emergence begins.
So the implications of the ability to self-regulate our own biology, they run deep in terms of divinity. Those are the ability to heal our own bodies. That is a godlike ability that the ancients talked about in the literature. We have it at our fingertips. We've been conditioned away from it, led to feel helpless and powerless, that we need intervention. And sometimes we do, and we have technology for that. And I'm happy that technology is there when it reaches that point. The point is to honor the gift